Hi, I'm Mary Potter Kenyon. I live in Dubuque, Iowa. I'm a program coordinator at Shalom Spirituality Center. I'm also a public speaker and a workshop presenter, and I'm the author of over 700 published pieces in newspapers, magazines, and anthologies, including 10 Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I'm also the author of 7 traditionally published books. My writing career began shortly after I gave birth to my 4th child in 1988 and abandoned the pursuit of a master's degree that I was working on in family services at University of Northern Iowa, and decided that I needed to hang on to some semblance of creativity. As I raised a growing family, I would go on to give birth to 4 more children, so a total of 8 children. And I chose writing as that pursuit, that creative pursuit. And this is the glamorous life of a writer, if you can see that. That was pretty much me for the next 30 years. Not with the same baby on the back, of course, but I was literally a homeschooling mother of 8 children who had to find the time, had to make the time to write. And that would mean sometimes there would be a baby on my back as I was typing away at a typewriter, because we're talking in the 80s and 90s, and this is on a typewriter and eventually on a computer. So in 1996, not only did I give birth to my 6th child, but I gave birth to my first book, which is Homeschooling from Scratch, with a small press, a very small advance. And this book is pretty much obsolete now. It has some good ideas in it, but this was pre-internet days of homeschooling. So it's, other than how to save money on some of our materials and stuff, and even that is obsolete. This book, if I were to rewrite it today, would be totally different. So I gave birth to that 6th baby, Emily, and Homeschooling from Scratch, and I got in my first anthology that year, Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul. So you'd think I was on my way, right, as a writer? Well, that's not the way writing works. Sometimes we have our slow periods. Sometimes we have to fight our way and claw our way to get published. There is, unless you are never submitting anything, you will face rejection, and that's sometimes hard for people. But I was determined, bound and determined to have another book published someday and to keep writing, and that's what I did. My husband was my biggest supporter. He believed in me, and in 2010 and 2011, when I was working on a book about couponing, he was my biggest supporter. And he was the one who encouraged me to do some workshops related to that book. And as most of you writers or want to be writers know, we need to build up a platform as an author. And part of that platform for a book on couponing was going to be couponing workshops. And when I think back to when I approached a community college about doing a couponing class, and they said, sure, what do you need? And I said, an overhead projector, which just goes to show you, number 1, I hadn't ever made a PowerPoint before. And number 2, I was well out of the loop of what a PowerPoint meant. So we as writers have to learn how to do new things. And 15 minutes after sitting down with the person who was going to hire me to do a workshop, I knew how to do a PowerPoint. And so I did a lot of shopping and a lot of couponing to get these slides for this, what ended up as a 2-hour how to coupon PowerPoint. It took a lot of time and a lot of energy, but it was fun. And our writing careers can be fun too. So my husband drove me to that very first workshop, and he sat at the back of the room, and I will never forget looking up and catching sight of his face, and the love and the support I saw there took my breath away. I had to catch my breath just to be able to continue speaking. When we are talking about our passions, we get excited. And if you're writing a book or wanting to write a book about something you are not excited about, don't even try. I mean, because that will show through your writing. But when we are excited about something, and I was excited about couponing because I had been living and breathing the couponing lifestyle for almost 30 years. And then I did the workshop, and my husband believed in this book. I didn't know how I would do any of this without him. And then suddenly I had to. In March 2012, my husband, who was a cancer survivor, passed away after heart stent surgery. 7 months later, I signed a book contract for what would be Coupon Crazy: The Science, the Savings, and the Stories Behind America's Extreme Obsession. This book was published by Familius. They were a fairly new company, a small independent press. They have grown wildly. They are now based in California, and I have been lucky enough to publish several more books with this company and have grown with them, and can't say enough good things about this company that produces such beautiful books. So that book came out in 2013. It was the book my husband had believed in. I can tell you now that what I felt when I saw at the Cedar Rapids Barnes & Noble an entire window display of my book was nothing. I wanted to feel it. I mean, that's what we all dream of as authors, is to see our book in a bookstore window, to go there and do a book signing, a book reading. But this was the book that my husband had believed in. This was the book that he had encouraged me to write. It was his idea. And so to see it published a year after his death, and for him to not see that, that was hard. I wanted to feel the excitement that we all can feel with that first book. Well, second book, but the first book in many, many years. So I wrote another book, Chemotherapist: How Cancer Cured a Marriage. I had written this during my husband's cancer treatment in 2006 and had not found a publisher for it. It's a caregiving story, but it's also a love story. What happens to a marriage during a caregiving experience like that? And Familius Publishing accepted that book proposal, and so that book came out. So we had the book that my husband believed in, then we had a book that wouldn't exist without my caring for him and for our marriage. And the next book was Refined by Fire: A Journey of Grief and Grace. Because not only had I lost my husband in 2012, I'd lost my mother in 2010, and I lost my grandson in 2013. So there was a 3-year period when I lost 3 people who were very important to me. And what happened during that journey of grief, it became just as much a journey of grace. And by that I mean I was thrust into stillness with my husband's death. And for the first time in my adult life, I mean, you saw me with the baby on the back. That was my life. That was my lifestyle, was caring for children. There was no quiet time to write. There was no stillness in my life. I found those moments to write. I wrote at 5 a.m. before children were up. I would pull over to the curb and scribble away on a notepad when a baby fell asleep in the back of the car. I would sit on the lid of the toilet seat and write while children were playing in the bathtub. I would volunteer to sit with the child as they fell asleep at night, just so I could write by the light of a nightlight. What happened with the loss of these beautiful, beautiful souls was that I found that stillness that we need as Christians to develop a relationship with God. And that's what happened to me. And so that this book of Refined by Fire is what it says it is. It's a journey of grief and grace. And Familius published this book. And the foreword was written by Cecil Murphy, who you might know from 90 Minutes in Heaven. He wrote Don Piper's story. The next book that came about was Mary and Me, A Lasting Link Through Ink. This book was co-written with Mary Jedlicka Humpston. And this book chronicles a friendship, a 30-year, almost 30-year friendship at the time, of two people who wrote letters. As the biggest link in our friendship was letters. After my husband died, and my friend Mary traveled from Iowa City to see me once a month for 18 months and listen and be there for me and take me out for lunch, our friendship changed dramatically. And this book chronicles a little bit of that. We look at faith, we look at writing, we both enjoy writing, and it looks at friendship, because until shortly after my husband died, I did not really have female friends. I had my sisters, I had my husband, who was my best friend, and I had Mary, my co-author for this book. And I really didn't know how to make female friends, how to keep friends, how to even be a very good friend. And I learned through different experiences and through attending writers' conferences and discovering what it is to have a tribe of people, of women who are interested in the same thing as you. And now I have many, many dear, dear friends. But Mary, my co-author, always had that. She always had the groups that she belonged to, and the Bible studies and the coffees out. And so it was a different experience for me to learn what it was to have female friends, and I'm so blessed by them today. And the next book I wrote was Expressive Writing for Healing, Journal Your Way from Grief to Hope. Because what I found after the death of my husband, I had not really journaled before that. I was a writer, I wrote, but I hadn't journaled. And I instinctively turned to pretty much three things after his death, and that was the Bible. I knew I needed something that was in there within those pages, answers, because if we are all going to lose somebody, certainly God designs us to withstand this and to handle this. And so I was looking for answers in the Bible. Prayer, I needed prayer from other people. I needed to hear their prayers out loud. That was different in my life. And somehow I knew that I needed to write. I needed to write my way through this to make sense of what was happening, because I didn't know any other widows. My mom was a widow, but she had already passed away 17 months before my husband, so she wasn't there to ask these questions. So instinctively, I turned to writing, and I journaled. And that first morning I journaled, it was 48 hours after my husband had died, and I filled 3 pages of things I was thankful for, because I was seeing and I was figuring out that there was a meaning in this. In losing him, I could either become broken completely, or I could become broken open. And what I mean by that is let other people in, become a different person because of him, become more like the best of my mother, my husband, my grandson, the kindness in them, the loving attitude. I wanted to be more like them. So anyway, 48 hours after my husband died, I started journaling. And 3 months later, with almost daily journaling and working through things, I wondered, how do people handle grief and death without writing about it? Because I found a healing property in that journaling. And so I actually, because I am a writer and I love research, started researching this. And so I was reading about the science of bereavement, and I was reading about expressive writing and what it can do for us. And I discovered that yes, there is a therapeutic benefit to writing for anybody, not just writers, to writing and working our way through things, to writing letters even writing letters, because we have to slow down. We have that meditative time, because writing by hand takes time. And so I started doing some workshops on expressive writing for healing. I still do them for grief support groups. For a grief retreat that I started in 2017, I decided to take online courses to become certified as a grief counselor, because it had become such a part of my life of wanting to help other people. And so sometimes our writing is written to help other people. And that's what my books are. And that's what Familius Publishing publishes, is books that will help families and help other people. So my Expressive Writing for Healing journal came out now way back when my mother had passed away, back in 2010, when what she left behind was not just a legacy of faith, because she had such strong faith, but also a legacy of creativity. So I grew up in a very poor home, and yet somehow my parents managed to make our home comfortable, and my mother especially, with the wall hangings she was making, the teddy bears made out of wool coats, the little denim jumpers she made out of a denim skirt, the rag rugs she handmade, the wall hangings made out of burlap and buttons. She was a woman who, at the age of 42, decided, well, I guess I'm going to take a kitchen knife and carve a piece of wood. I mean, you grow up with somebody like that, and she eventually made a home business out of the wood carvings she made and the art that she designed and the paintings. She eventually had a home business like that. And when she passed away, we found unpublished manuscripts amongst her things. And I saw in her writing that she was saying her greatest desire in life was that her children would get to heaven and that they would utilize their talents. Now, I'd been writing for years. I'd had things published, but I hadn't taken myself seriously as a writer. And her death made me start to think about that. And when her house was emptied and we were going to turn over the keys to a realtor, I was cleaning it with my youngest 3 daughters. And I came dusting windowsills. The house was completely empty, dusting windowsills. I felt something give on the windowsill as I was dusting. And I found a very thin advertising pencil. Now, this is not the pencil that I found. It's like the pencil I found, but I actually used the pencil I found in a piece of art, which I'll get to in a minute, of what we can do as very creative people. And I said to my children when I found that pencil, look, one of Grandma's magic pencils. And my girls just rolled their eyes like, Mom, there's no such thing as a magic pencil. Now, they knew their grandmother was an artist. They knew she did painting, and they thought of her as an artist. They saw that. I don't think they saw their mother as an artist, because what did I do? I played with words, right? And here Grandma made beautiful wall hangings and paintings, and she even did murals on some walls. So I went home and sat down with my mother's magic pencil, and I thought about how years ago, as a teen, as a child, I used to love to draw. I used to love to color. I used to paint. And I wondered, is that still in me? So I took that magic pencil on a piece of paper and I just thought, I'll just try to draw a tree. I haven't drawn a tree for 40 years. I mean, can I still do that? And I started to draw a tree. And then I heard a gasp in the doorway. And it was my young daughter, Katie. And she was looking at that tree I'd drawn on the piece of paper. And she said, oh my gosh, you can't draw. That really is a magic pencil. Can I use it next? And so I sat those girls down and I showed them drawings I had done in high school. And I said, this was a lesson to me and to them. You know what? We've got something in us. We've got something in us that we were born with. And for me, I believe with my faith that God designed us that way. But guess what? Science says the same thing. It's not just about that God designed us this way, but we, each and every one of us, is designed to create. And you see it in kids, you see it in toddlers, don't you? You see it in the little children. They don't care if they color inside the lines. They don't care if they get all messy with their art. They just want to play and they want to dig in the dirt and they want to help mom bake. And, you know, there's something that they're drawn to. And if we feed that, and if we don't let them lose that, they can go on to do something related to whether it's gardening or baking or painting or drawing or playing a musical instrument. Whatever it is in them can blossom. And so, but most of us don't do that, do we? We have to go to school and we have to learn this and we have to color inside the lines and then we have to get a job and we're busy raising families, and art and creativity seems like something for leisure time, not something for us to keep in our lives, even though we are healthier. Science shows we are healthier mentally, physically, emotionally, if we are getting lost in whatever it is that we have a passion for. Mine happens to be writing, and I can wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and start writing and then be interrupted by my now 17-year-old daughter. Are we going to eat today? Because it's 2 o'clock, and I look at the clock and I'm still in my pajamas. That's getting lost in the flow. So I started studying creativity. I started doing speaking on creativity. It broke my heart to hear young mothers say, well, I don't have time for that. Or older women say, it's too late for me. Or worse, I don't have any talent. I don't believe it. We all have it in us. And so this book that I'm so excited about that was released in August is called To Be Creative, a guide to reigniting your creativity. This is my 6th book with Familius. It's a beautiful book. It means so much to me. It's so exciting. And the joy I was looking for in that first book that I couldn't find because it was what my husband believed in and he was no longer here, I found my joy again. And that's what this whole book is about, is finding our joy in whatever our passion is and whatever it is that we were designed to do, and to reignite that, to snatch back our crayons from our childhood, to look back to our childhood and figure out what it is that we were called to do, that we were designed to do, and then find a way to fit it back into your life. Take those crayons back and make the time to start being creative. And you can do that in your everyday life. You can do that in how you are baking, in your gardening, in your canning, in your quilting, in your musical instruments, in your writing, in whatever it is that you were called to do for your own sake. You need to fit that back in your life. So that's what this book is about. And I think during this pandemic, people have seen the value in creativity. We've had to, haven't we? I mean, our kids might have come home from school and we've got to figure out ways for them to learn. I see women sitting down on the sidewalk and coloring with chalk, you know, things you might not have done before, families playing board games. This is a timely book because right now we need creativity. We need that. And so I thank you for spending this time with me. These books are available through Workman Publishing. They're available through your independent bookstores. I think it's more important than ever that we support our independent bookstores. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it through Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Anywhere that books are sold, you can get this book. And all of my books, but this one I'm especially excited about. So thank you so much for spending this time with me.